Hello everybody, welcome back. My name's Daniel Gormley. Welcome back to my channel, Hometown Chess Heroes. There's a British Blitz Championship going on at the moment. Unfortunately, I failed to qualify. Gorman, so I'm not even the best Gorman anymore because there's a Tom Gorman who did manage to qualify. He's playing in it. Amit Gartz, who's in a very strong position to win, become a double British champion because he also won the British Rapid Play Championships. But he's yet to win the British Classical, which is the big one that everybody wants, right? So he will have a good chance over the next few years if he plays in that tournament, as well as the English Championships as well. He might also play the European Blitz and Rapid Play. I would like playing that, but it's quite expensive, so if anyone wants to support me. By the way, a guy called Gary Cole sent me this game. It's very kind. So shout out to you, Gary. Very kind of him. If people want to send me their games to analyse, feel free to do so. So this game, I believe, took place in Coulsdon Congress. And I believe it was a Saturday morning game or Saturday afternoon game. And it delayed a game that took part. So it's probably a Saturday morning game. And because it went on so long, it delayed games that went on later. Playing white was a guy called Peter Lalic, who is the son of Bogdan Lalic and Susan Lalic. He's also a good chess player. I met him recently, actually, at the North. We were talking about the Blitz. I played against Peter Lalic. He also took part in the Northumbria Blitz qualifier. He played in several of the qualifiers. I only played in one. But he also failed to qualify, but I was chatting to him. He's actually a nice guy. A little bit eccentric, like most chess players. But he's come under fire for prolonging his game that took place in Coulsdon. So we'll have a look at this game anyway. And there's actually been a thread, not specifically about this game, but there's a thread about very long tournament games. So let's talk about that as we go along. So the game went d3, already an unusual first move. So you're not really taking the ball by the horns, but you're kind of going for a kind of Reti type setup. Again, knight c3, slightly unusual, not really challenged. I mean, after knight c3, d5 appeals to me as a good move because you're immediately taking centre. I think if white plays these kind of avoidance systems, you should aim to take the centre as quickly as possible. But black does not do that. So we get this move h4. So I think a reasonable response to that move would be to just simply play h6. It's slightly double-edged sword because sometimes white will play h5, g5 and then f4. But I'm not sure if that is so effective in this particular situation. I don't really know. Maybe black could even consider playing g4, right? Because if rook h4, then f5 could be played. Instead, black just jumped in with knight d4, but I'm not sure exactly what that move does, other than prepares knight c6. It does allow h5, so I think black should either have played h5 or h6, just to prevent white. You know, white is playing slightly one-dimensionally with this h-pawn push. So I think the best way was just to prevent that getting any further. Now I would say that white's position is slightly better because black has allowed this push. So h6, bishop f6, d4 was a good move. Rook e8. So black's position looking a little bit passive, and he's decided to castle queenside. His king is not completely safe. b4, which is a very sharp move by Peter, but a very typical way that white will try to attack on the queen side. So that looks like a good move. I don't know whether black should have, could have, would have played c4 because it's a very kind of committal move, right? But it's quite a good defensive move. I don't know if there are any other options or any better options. So I have not analysed this game with an engine. This is the first time I've looked at this game. I have no idea what the best moves are. So you watching have got just as much clue as I have. I mean, the first thing that jumps out at me is if you take, then clearly there's a threat of white going rook c1, right? Which looks a little bit scary to say the least. But king b8, rook c1, you do have queen b6. It does look slightly awkward. If white goes e5, you probably don't take on b4 because of bishop d2, right? Although you do win a lot of pawns, but I think losing the piece is more significant. But after e5, you could just drop back with a bishop to h8, so it's not the end of the world. But white has also the option going queen d2, but then that drops a4. So maybe just taking was... I mean, I always feel like if I'm trying to defend, and black is trying to defend, I feel like c4 is very passive. I don't know if it's a terrible move, but it just feels like it's not really challenging white in any way, and white has complete control over center. So g4 was played. Yeah, now e5, and then you don't get the f5 square for the knight. So quite a clever play, but I'm surprised at his next move. So having won that square, he's now giving it up with g5. Now you have it at hand, you've got a very blocked position. So already you've seen the contours of what obviously must have happened later, which is that the position is very, very blocked. There's no pawn breaks. I would not have gone g5 myself, I must admit. Because although it locks in the black bishop forever, it also, I don't like closing the position. I like to keep the position open. So one move that possibly jumps out at me is bishop g5, because you can't go rook f8. I feel like the black queen side we can still potentially attack over there, although it would be difficult to break through. So bishop g5 is one possible move, but he went g5. Another option is maybe to go knight g3, but yeah, black will go f6 if you do nothing. I'll say wanted to block in the bishop, so effectively you're now piece up, right? It's already a very good position, strategically speaking, so maybe g5 actually was a very good move, because strategically speaking, black is playing a piece down. But of course now we're looking at a very, very long game. I mean, one possible plan, maybe I'm looking at it now, I'm thinking bishop a3, b5, bishop c1. So I'm projecting there when I say bishop a3. Bishop c1 to a3 and then b5 and then bishop d6. Or the bishop will have some influence. So at the moment the bishop's blocked as well. But that's a drawback of g5. That's why I'd rather blockade the bishop with the bishop for the time being, and then maybe have more aggressive options. But he went g5. Very depressing position for black because he has no counterplay. So far, I would say Peter's played a very good game. Well, he's a pretty good player, let's be honest. Knight f1 again, very clever. So he's heading for g4, which is excellent. King h1. Yeah, really depressing. This is what I was saying earlier about not, you know, once you go c4, it's a very committal move because then you can't ever, you know, create any counterplay here. So you effectively, the kind of position that I hate to defend, because I don't like positions where there's no chances of counterplay. You know, even if you've got like a sneaky little chance. But here, black has a very depressing position. So let's fast forward through all this kind of boring manoeuvring that we're getting to go forward to more boring manoeuvring. So he's going king h4. I suppose at this point white is strategically winning, and he faffs around for a long time actually. So he brings his king all the way over to the queen's side because black effectively can't do anything. If you go a5, I will meet that with b5. Well, if you go b5, there's going to draw back. There's going to be a drawback because I'm just going to take, right? So I'm curious to see how white he faffs around with his king. Okay, so I think this was the source of the disagreement. That they said that he effectively was banking a lot of time. So what's the engine evaluation at this point? Winning for white. Yeah, but he's banking a lot of time. So how many moves did he have when he started doing his king stuff? Or at the point where he last made a pawn move or exchange? I'm trying to go back. When was the last time he made an exchange? King g2, right? That was the last exchange. So we're now up to move 28. So he's got to move 78 before he has to play some kind of pawn move. It's not clear. I suppose he could just go F3. He'll probably just go F3. Yeah, he's going to go F3. So this is, yeah, so he's done all this. It's completely pointless, but it also requires a lot of patience to do that, right? So he's gone F3 just, you know, just before he has to. He could have waited to move 78 and then he's gone F3, right? And then he keeps playing and playing, and then he's now got to a move 121 before he has to play another pawn move. Fascinating game, riveting. He's moved his rook for a huge amount of variety. So we're trying to get up to move. So at some point he'll probably move his bishop and then move the f pawn maybe, or he'll move some pawn on the queen side. So I suppose the question is, what does the move knight f6 actually grant you, right? And what the only way for white to try and make progress here is either to push on the queen side with b5 or play the move knight f6. So he's basically trying to build up as much time as possible due to the time control, and then eventually he's gone b5. It's not a terribly risky move because how can black create counterplay? Now one idea might be to bring the knight round to b4 maybe, or eventually support a5 push, but obviously you'd have to defend b5 first. Yeah, so he's effectively, this is black's only, he doesn't want to go a6. He could have maybe thought about playing a6, but a6 creates no threat because you're not threatening to take on b5. At some point he may have considered playing a6. So he's brought the bishop round. So again, he's got like a huge number of moves. When did he play b5? So he's got, that was on move 116, so he's got until 166 before he has to play another move. Riveting encounter. I'm so glad Gary sent me this game. This has cheered up my Saturday. No end. This should be on Netflix or maybe like primetime TV. It should be on like pay-per-view, you know. That's just gone rook g8. Oh, a5. Finally he's gone a5. So a very patient game, right? So he had up to maybe move 166 before he had to play that, but he actually went early with move 151. Yeah, so now he's breaking through tactically. He's gone queen b6, very clever move. So after the move, maybe queen c7 was a mistake actually. Yeah, because I think you have to make b6 with a6, right? And a6 with b6. So it's not clear to me how white would break through if you just don't allow. I don't like allowing b6 with tempo. I mean, I'd imagine that white is winning here anyway, but it might have been a much tougher game to win if black had just, you know, maybe on a high depth it might even be a draw. I don't actually see how you win if I just, it probably is winning, but you know, how do you break free if I just keep the position as it is and just keep fiddling around my queen? Not easy to do actually. Yeah, this is why Magnus didn't really believe in blockades, because it's, you know, it might not be holdable anyway, and even if it is, it's hard to play because it's, you know, it's psychologically hard to just keep moving your pieces in a very negative way, and eventually I think once you allow b6 it must be over, because now I open up the king and I've got all sorts of tactical ideas. He just went queen, he realised the ending was winning. Rook at, wow, beautiful finish, rook f7. And yeah, so again, like, well, I mean, here, come on, man, you should just be putting the game to bed quickly. Just go knight e5 and knight g6. I don't know why he has to. Okay, eventually he did put the game away. I mean, the guy could resign at this point, right? Yeah, so effectively the game went on to move 187. Yeah, that was the final move actually. Knight e5, black decided to resign. So interesting battle, but he got a lot of criticism because people on the ground at Coulsdon, they felt that it delayed the start of round. Would have been probably round 3, right? The Saturday afternoon game of their tournament. I didn't realise they had a weekend congress actually in Coulsdon. Very nice. I've been to that part of the world. It's a very nice part of the world actually, Surrey. There's quite a lot of coaching that goes on down there in Coulsdon. So back in the day, going back to the 1990s, I actually played for Coulsdon Chess Club. Coulsdon Chess Federation, I believe it was called actually. Or Coulsdon Chess Fellowship. Or anyway, there was a church there in Coulsdon. And the guy who was Herakis and Alexis Herakis and John Naylor were members of that club. And they said, why don't you come down and play for Coulsdon? You know, they're paying players to play for their club. And a guy called Howard Curtis, I met a guy called Howard Curtis who was like a lay preacher. But his practices were controversial, so he eventually ended up in prison. You know, it was kind of a bit of a scandal. He had a wife called Marilyn. And there were also people involved there called Scott Freeman, who's a nice guy, and Emma Freeman. Daniel Glidden was involved. There's also Paul Bloom. But yeah, I mean, I think Howard originally had a plan to convert. There was like an old mental hospital in Surrey. He had a plan to convert that into a chess centre. So he wanted to build like an English chess centre, you know, but it never came to fruition. His plans never came to fruition, and then eventually all fell apart for him. But yeah, it's a very nice part of the world. If we ignore all that, and then, well, I did a bit of coaching at Coulsdon as well. It was like catering and everything. But as far as the, yeah, I think you do have to have the ability to grind as a chess player. So I don't really dislike what Lalic did. I mean, if there is a fault, there's a fault in the time control. So you could have, for example, maybe the better time control to play, which people alluded to on the forum, would have been, say, a 10-second increment. I never really liked increment because I felt like whenever your opponent got into time trouble, it was deceptive. I generally don't get in time trouble myself. But when my opponents did, I often would misjudge how much time they had left. And somehow they're always building up time, right? So you can get lured into thinking your opponent's very short time, but then they build up time, and then next thing you regret actually trying to hustle them earlier. So yeah, you have the situation where the round is delayed, you know, maybe by half an hour, maybe by an hour, because of one game's going on and on and on. As other people have suggested on that forum post, this isn't a very usual occurrence. A game like this, where it's going to last that long, and people are going to manoeuvre around for that long in a weekend, or even have the patience to do that, would not be very common. But it can happen. I mean, I myself actually, I was playing in a rapid play game, and it was at the London Classic, and it was a super rapid play, and it was one of the first years, it might even been the first year where they held this super rapid play, and they had people like Nakamura playing, Kramnik, and you had like really top players playing in it, Caruana possibly as well. And I was trying to win, I was playing in the first round against somebody rated about 2000, 1900 V-Day. And the guy played a pretty good game actually. And I was trying to win, I was black, and I was trying to win knight and rook versus rook. There was a fair few people around the board because we were the last games to finish, right? And and the guy, my opponent, tried to claim a draw. I was like, well, you can't claim a draw because it's not 50 moves, right? Or it's not however many moves. One of the arbiters, which really annoyed me, he said, you're delaying everybody else. And I really got offended by that. I kind of grudged that I carried to this day because I felt like it was basically insinuating nobody really cares about your game. You're only like a weak GM. Everyone's waiting for like Kramnik. You're keeping Kramnik waiting. You know, I think that they didn't really know how to handle it because probably the first year they did something like that. So they weren't really used to dealing with. So it's kind of like a lash out at somebody who would, how dare they delay? And I thought, you don't really understand like professional chess, mate, because professional chess is all about grinding. You know, look at this book that's recently been released called Grind Like a Grandmaster by David Howell and Magnus Carlsen. It's all about grinding out, endgames. And I personally, I do feel in weekend congresses, I'm less inclined to grind because of the fatigue. Maybe if it was the final round, it would be different, but the fatigue factor, you often have to strategically judge whether you should try to grind out the round, the morning game when you know you're going to have a tough game in the afternoon. For example, I played Northumbria Masters earlier in the year, and I played against somebody in the morning. Stephen Jones actually finished second in the British Championships, and I was losing earlier in the game, but then he blundered. And I probably was winning some ending where I was exchange up, but he had like a pawn or maybe even a couple of pawns for it. And then eventually, I should have won that probably earlier, but then eventually we got Rook versus Bishop. Now, I understood I could have played on and on and on, because there's no way you lose that position. Even if you lose on time, it'd still be, I think, still given as a draw, which I didn't realise at the time. But I wasn't short of time anyway. But I just felt like he would defend it, and so it's kind of fairly early into that end game. I was just sort of like just off at the draw, because I realised that the next round I would play quite a tough pairing against Goodmanson, the top seed from Iceland, and I was already felt tired. This was like round 5, I think it was, and the next round, in the afternoon, was round 6. So I didn't really want to play on and on for another like 45 minutes. Knowing I didn't have that tough game in the afternoon, I wanted to get some food before the tough game. It turned out I needed it because it was a tough game. I eventually drew that game. When I analysed that ending later, because Keith Harker was like, you should have played it on. He was absolutely right, because when I analysed that ending later, it was actually tough to defend, and I realised if you just play, it's quite easy for the defending side to go wrong. But yeah, I do feel that you need to have that grinding ability. So I wouldn't really castigate Peter in any way. If there is a mistake, it's obviously with the time control. And the fact that they allow this 30-second increment is probably too long. So Coulston and maybe other weekenders should maybe look at that and say, actually, do you need that much time? Do you even need that longer time control, given you're playing 5 games in 3 days? I'd say the quicker the time control, the better, right? You could even do an hour and a half guillotine. All your moves. But the problem with guillotine is it creates other discussions. It's like then it creates arguments about whether you should be keeping score, or whether you have the right to claim a draw there because your opponent is just trying to flag you. So guillotine, I understand that increments the way, but maybe a quicker increment with 10 seconds per move would be the solution to avoid these kind of situations where people just play and play and play. And I think Peter Lalic, knowing his personality, is probably just a very level kind of guy. He's probably the sort of person that actually enjoys this kind of like long game. Enjoys the torturing the opponent for as long as possible. And he sees that as a challenge, as a mental challenge. Some people like myself don't really enjoy that so much, but I do think to get to a certain level, you've got to enjoy these long games. And I do think that's one of the reasons why classical chess kind of stands out in a way, and why it's an interesting form of chess in a way that I don't think rapid or blitz will ever be. Because you can have that long dramatic game that's really got these sort of like psychological, emotional ups and downs. I don't think you see that in rapid or blitz as much. It's exciting, but I think classical chess is a kind of excitement, drama, and I think these long games are a kind of excitement, drama and thrill that all of their own, especially with their classical games. I remember a few years ago I played a game at Harrogate against Alan Merry, and I offered him a draw before the game, stupidly, because a lot of people, somebody convinced me to offer a package draw. that we were going to do a package draw. He was going to offer a draw to his opponent, I was going to offer a draw to my opponent. So stupidly, I got sucked into that and offered him a draw for a game. He declined. Then we played a very long game where I was losing at one point. Managed to defend. It was a really dramatic, exciting game. It was the last game to finish, so it delayed everybody getting home. But I got a real satisfaction out of the game, and I won that game, so I won the tournament outright with 4.5 out of 5. Won the 500 quid. And I thought you'd never really get that kind of emotional release or excitement out of winning a rapid play or blitz game, I don't think. So, yeah, that would be my arguments. So I think maybe change the time control. Long games are fine. And I admire the fact that Pete was willing to just keep doing that, prodding around with his king. Possibly could have gone for the breakthrough earlier. But fair play, you know, that's part of chess. Yeah, so that's that game. And thanks, Gary, again for sending me that game. And yeah, send me any more games, any interesting games you want me to analyse. But if you are going to send me a game, maybe don't analyse it with the engine beforehand, and then you're probably getting more satisfaction out of watching me trying to stumble my way through your game. Or do whatever you want, really. But yeah, send me your games. Yeah. Anyway, thanks again for watching me. My name's been Daniel Gormally. My name is Daniel, not been Daniel, is Daniel Gormally. Thanks a lot for sending me your game. My channel is called Hometown Chess Hero. Please subscribe on YouTube. I don't have many subscribers. I'm trying to beef up the subscribers. My aim is to get to 500 subscribers. Then I'll retire. At the moment, I've only got about 150 odd. Thanks again. Goodbye.